Emergency, emergency. Do not attempt to adjust your television sets. We interrupt your regularly broadcast program for this news bulletin. FTX in the USA. Possibly the greatest financial and political scandal in American history. Yeah. Folks, I had to do this video. I know we're in the midst of my series on Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, three-part thesis on his books, and we're up next is COVID-19, the Great Reset. But with all the news going on right now in the United States, technically it's world news now, I had to get this video out because it's mind-blowing. What's going on right now in the United States with these revelations currently coming to the public forum regarding the cryptocurrency exchange FTX, and it's currently on the run, former CEO Sam Bankman-Fried. This story is just the tip of the iceberg as to possibly what's been going on in the United States over the last couple of years. And there's more information coming out, obviously, as time goes by, that shines more light on it. But I've fleshed out what I believe is the general narrative that a lot of people are starting to put the pieces together. The puzzle is starting to come together. And I had to do this video to cover it because I literally had to sit down after figuring it all out because it's that crazy. But anyway, you clicked on this video for this topic, so let's talk about it. The FTX implosion and US politics, how does it all fit together? Well, we're learning that the Democrat Party most likely set up the FTX cryptocurrency exchange. And the front man, as I said, is a 29-year-old little curly-haired, out of shape Jewish kid, MIT grad, named Sam Bankman-Fried, and he was installed as the CEO of this company. Where did he get the money to start the company from scratch? Where did he get the training or the schooling to set up a cryptocurrency exchange? Nobody knows. But he went to MIT, so he must be smart enough to do it. So it's plausible, right? So he's installed as the front man. And if you remember back maybe 2 years ago, FTX came out of nowhere, if you follow the cryptocurrency world like I do. And it got celebrity endorsements and media coverage everywhere. So much so that this little cryptocurrency exchange, started by 29-year-old Sam Bankman-Fried out of thin air, became the number 2 cryptocurrency exchange in the US. And I want to say it was in the top 5 in the world. And this took less than a year, right? So that should have been red flag number 1. How does this 29-year-old guy who literally looks like he crawled out of bed 5 minutes ago, no matter where he is, he always looks like he literally just got out of bed. How does this kid, 29, start the second largest cryptocurrency exchange in the United States without somebody bankrolling him, without major institutions, be they banks or hedge funds or whatever, setting him up? We never got that story. All we heard was, oh, have you heard about FTX? It's a great cryptocurrency exchange. Sam Bankman-Fried is this guy, and he's a billionaire now, right? He becomes a multimillionaire and then a billionaire in the span of 3 to 4 years. And the story that everyone's told is, well, he's just a really good guy, and he said his mission in life is to get rich so that he can find new ways to give that wealth away. He drives a Toyota Corolla. He's just like you. He's just like you, except he's worth $16 billion. Does that make any sense? Here's this guy who becomes insanely wealthy literally overnight. We don't know how. And all he wants to do is give his money away, right? If you believe that fairy tale, stay tuned. Then what happens after all of this? Well, we saw in the beginning of 2022, a proxy war began in the Ukraine between the United States and Russia. And yeah, we'd like to pretend that it's a war between the Ukraine and Russia, but in reality, it's a proxy war. It's the United States and our NATO allies fighting over whether Ukraine will remain sovereign or perhaps fall under Russian hegemony. And it looks like the latter is probably more likely after all is said and done. But what else happened during this Ukrainian conflict? Well, we saw that the U.S. Congress decided to send billions upon billions of U.S. taxpayer money to the Ukraine war effort, or ostensibly that's what we were told, right? Well, we have to send $50 billion of your tax dollars to Ukraine so they can win the war against Russia. Everybody in America is like, well, wait a minute, like we're going into possibly a huge recession. We've done nothing but print money since 2020 because of the pandemic, and now you want to send more of our money to the Ukraine, which, as far as the UN is concerned, before the war was the most corrupt government in the world, second only to Russia. Yeah, we're going to send $50 billion or more of your money to Ukraine so that they can fight the Ruskies. And, well, if you don't agree with this, well, then you're a bigot. Okay, well, you know what? That's fine. That's a lot of money, though. So can we get like an accounting of where it's all going? Like, is it being itemized? No, we're just going to shovel a boatload of money to the Ukrainian government so they can win the war. And they kept doing this as fast as they could. And everyone has to think, like, why? Why was there this rush to just shovel taxpayer dollars to the tunes of multi-billions to this country, which we know is thoroughly corrupt? Well, it makes sense if you keep going. The Ukraine government took its cut of the money that our Congress in the United States sent them and then laundered back billions of dollars that were left to the same U.S. politicians who voted to send the billions of U.S. tax dollars in the first place, and they did it via the FTX native token FTT. So it works like this. A congressman, most likely a Democrat, although I'm positive there are Republicans who are mixed up in this too. That'll probably come out later in the wash. But the Democrat Party sets up this FTX exchange. They create this SBF goofball kid as their front guy, and everyone thinks he's a wizard, like he's like Mozart, because he's genius. He's going to make us all wealthy. And then what do? They shovel our money to the Ukrainian government. The Ukrainian government takes its cut, maybe spends a couple $1 million on the war effort, but then for their trouble, for being the money launderers, they send back billions of dollars to the U.S. politicians and their re-election campaigns through the FTX exchange using the native FTT token, which is essentially worthless, right? What happens after that? Well, we see on election night 2022, roughly 5 days ago, the FTX exchange completely imploded. And it was through the other exchange, Binance, which possibly is a Chinese government front. We don't know yet, but I'm guessing that CZ, he goes by CZ, he's the front man of Binance for the Chinese government, just as SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, is the front man of FTX. But we'll find out if that's true later on or not. We don't know. But Binance called the bluff and knew this game was going on and pulled all of their reserves on their exchange of the FTT token. And then what also happened? Well, the U.S. politicians who had their money being laundered back through the FTX network via FTT token, they all cashed out. In other words, they went on a bank run. And it all happened on election night, right? Well, everyone's watching TV, seeing who won in their district or who's going to be their new representative. Is the House going to flip to the Republicans? Is the Senate going to stay in the Democrat hands? By the way, I think the Democrats are going to hold on the Senate because Nevada and Arizona took an extra 4 days to count who won their election, kind of just like what happened in 2020. Yeah, that all sounds above board, right? Which also, by the way, prohibits the Congress from impeaching and removing Joe Biden if the Democrat Party controls the Senate, because it'll have to be his party that votes to remove him. And how likely do you think that is to happen? Oh, by the way, Sam Bankman-Fried was the second largest donor to the Joe Biden campaign, behind only George Soros. And it just so happens the Democrats are going to keep the Senate. Right? A lot of coincidences. So the U.S. politicians who laundered the money through Ukraine via FTX, they did a bank run and they pulled the rug out from the FTX network by cashing out of their money. And SBF now is the patsy, and he's on the run. People think he's in the Bahamas, but there was word that he was trying to fly to Argentina. And then there was word that maybe he was going to try to abscond to Dubai. Who knows? But why isn't this guy under arrest, right? Do you think if you did something like this, the FBI or whatever alphabet agency you can think of would let you fly to the Bahamas and just camp out there after literally making off with hundreds of millions, if not billions of individual investors' money? Kevin O'Leary was just on TV like yesterday or the day before, and he completely trusted and put his faith in SBF and the FTX network. And it looks like he took a massive hit. He hasn't said, obviously, but most likely he got wrecked hard. What else did you notice happen in the last 2 weeks, if you pay attention to the gossip news? Tom Brady and Giselle Brady, or she's now, again, Giselle Bundchen, they got divorced. What happened a year ago? Well, Tom Brady was doing commercials for the FTX network. Remember those, like, are you in? Are you in? Yeah. I think they found out 2 weeks ago that this rug was going to get pulled on the FTX network and they were going to lose all their money. And it's possible they invested a large portion of their net worth into this pyramid scheme. And like Kevin O'Leary, they were not high up enough in the pyramid like certain U.S. politicians might have been to know when that scam was going to be collapsed. And now they got wrecked. And there was that people sharing the meme of this Larry David commercial, because Larry David did a Super Bowl commercial for FTX last Super Bowl, which would have been in January, February. And it's kind of ironic when you listen to the commercial. Larry David's like, you want to get in on FTX? And he's like, nah, I don't think so. It's like, were they making fun of us to our faces by using Larry David to sell the commercial as though the comedian is going to miss the next big thing because he just doesn't believe in new technology? But turns out Larry David in those commercials was 100% right. You want to get on FTX? No, I'll pass. Larry David in the commercial ends up being right. Tom Brady, are you in? Yeah, Tom, you got wrecked. Folks, this is possibly the biggest political and financial scandal of American history. Because if half of this is true, and we find out that all of those billions of dollars that our Congress voted to send to Ukraine ends up being traceable via blockchain back through the FTX network to their individual accounts, then they all need to go to prison. This SBF guy, I 100% believe he's most likely in on it, but I don't believe that the U.S. politicians told him the full story. As in, oh yeah, on election night, we're going to get all our money back and we're going to do it all at once. And we're going to crash this bogus FTX exchange we put you in charge of. And when the people get angry and they want blood, we're going to tell them it was SBF. It wasn't us. Well, no, we're elected officials. We wouldn't possibly do something that devious. And folks, you watch, they're going to use this situation they created, this money laundering scam, as justification to pass crypto laws and crypto regulations so they can close the door behind themselves. And then they can freeze you and I out as retail investors from getting in on this scam that they did. They're going to close the shop by ruining a exchange like FTX and saying that it was FTX that was all the reason they needed to pass laws. And they used it as a vehicle to launder all of our money. If half of this is true, it's the biggest scandal in U.S. history. Now, if 10% is true, when this is all said and done, the amount of money that was invested in FTX will make Bernie Madoff's pyramid or Ponzi scheme look like a picnic. because that was a private individual ripping off other private individuals. You're talking about a U.S. government controlled by a political party using an exchange for the purposes of laundering U.S. tax dollars to a foreign country currently in a war back to themselves. Why do you think all these politicians were going over to the Ukraine in the midst of a war just to meet with Vladimir Zelensky? Because they were his friend? Because they wanted to see how he was holding up? No, they wanted to know how good their investment was doing over there. As in, was all the money we sent getting back to the right people, i.e. us? Folks, that's what I think is going on. And I wanted to share this video in between the segments I'm doing on the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab because, if you go to the Wayback Machine on the internet, you'll find something interesting on the World Economic Forum's webpage of partners. And I'll put it up right here. And let me read for you what they had up just less than 6 days ago. It says, partners, FTX. FTX is a cryptocurrency exchange built by traders for traders. FTX offers innovative products including industry-first derivatives, options, volatility products, and leverage tokens. You don't say. It strives to develop a platform robust enough for professional trading firms and intuitive enough for first-time users. Headquarters, Bahamas. Yeah, that's another good red flag right there, right? Your cryptocurrency exchange is featured as a partner on the World Economic Forum, and it does most of its business in the Western world, almost exclusively in countries like the United States, but they're headquartered in the Bahamas, which would put them out of reach of U.S. regulators. Speaking of U.S. regulators, the SEC chairman, Gary Gensler, an MIT grad, met with Sam Bankman-Fried, according to the minutes that are kept on his calendar. This was back in March, right after the Ukraine war began. Gary Gensler is a member of the Democrat Party. He previously worked on the Hillary Clinton, I believe he was the head of their campaign, he was the campaign finance director. And he worked at the CFTC before that, the Commodities and Future Trade Commission. This guy is a career bureaucrat, but he also taught at MIT, which coincidentally is where Sam Bankman-Fried graduated from just 6 short years ago. He graduated in 2014. So almost 8 years ago, rather. These people have set up these networks, and when they pull the pin, it goes boom, and then before the smoke can clear, everybody makes off like roaches underneath the refrigerator. This will go down as the biggest political and financial scandal in U.S. history, if it's thoroughly investigated, and we haven't even seen the beginning of it. Oh, by the way, if you go to the World Economic Forum's webpage now and type in FTX, you'll get this. Webpage doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it never existed. Maybe you just imagined that page I read from the Wayback Machine. This is why I say I don't believe Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum is really in charge of anything. They are the front men of the World Economic Forum, just as SBF was set up as the front man of FTX. When these things go kaboom and the floor falls out from under everybody, that's the fall guy. That's the patsy you blame. When the World Economic Forum, who I believe takes its orders from all the other unseen hands in the world who are important people, it's Klaus Schwab you're supposed to get mad at. You're supposed to call him the Dr. Evil or the Ernst Stavro Blofeld, evil genius trying to take over the world. It's the people you don't see who are actually funding and managing the World Economic Forum and people like Klaus Schwab. They are second-tier masters of the universe. The first-tier masters of the universe, you will never see them. You will never read about their names in the newspaper. And if you do, it will be so unrelated to anything like the WEF that you won't even think twice about it. And that's how it works. And I don't think the World Economic Forum knew that the Democrat Party in the United States was planning to pull the rug out from under every single other investor in FTX. And they got fooled just like Kevin O'Leary and Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen did. They weren't high enough up in the pyramid. They were fourth or third tier masters of the universe. But they weren't second, they definitely weren't first. So they got left holding the bag. And that's where we are. Okay, I had to do this video because it's been on my mind like crazy today. I have done the readings for the first section of COVID-19, the Great Reset. So we will pick up with the first episode of the 3-part series I will do on this book. And we'll talk more about this. But yeah, folks, this is a sordid, evil mess. And people have to go to jail for this. They have to be publicly shamed and put in prison for years, if not decades, for doing these things. And enough is enough, because America is essentially a banana republic without the bananas. That's what we're becoming. If this is allowed to stand and nobody has to be held to account for it, it's insane. Okay. If you like this episode, give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe, leave a comment if you disagree, if you think it was all Sam Bankman-Fried's idea and everybody else, Gary Gensler, Joe Biden, the Democrat Party, Republican politicians, they were none the wiser. And they just decided to send billions of our dollars to the Ukraine because they really care about the people suffering there. If that's what you think, leave a comment, let me know, and we'll talk about it. But in any event, I hope you had a good weekend. Stay tuned, because I think this news is just getting started and we're going to see where it goes. But till then, take it easy.